Let's talk about high blood pressure. You know, for millions of people, it means a daily pill, a lifelong diagnosis. But what if I told you that for maybe 1 in 10 of those people, it isn't just some random bad luck? What if the real cause was hiding in plain sight? And what if it was actually curable?
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll pull back the curtain on this hidden cause. Then we'll look at how doctors actually hunt for it. After that, we get to a really critical decision point in treatment, which leads us right to the core evidence, a showdown that honestly changes the whole game. And finally, we'll bring it all home and talk about what this really means for patients.
You know, most of the time when you get diagnosed with high blood pressure, they call it essential hypertension. That's pretty much doctor speak for, yeah, your blood pressure is high, but we don't really know the specific reason why. But that's not the whole story, not by a long shot. There's this whole other category, a very specific cause, that's just hiding behind that vague diagnosis for millions.
And really, this is the question that changes everything. What if we stopped thinking of high blood pressure as the disease itself and started seeing it for what it often is? A symptom of something we can pinpoint, something we can actually fix. Just that little shift in thinking opens up a whole new world of possibilities. So what is it? It's a condition called primary aldosteronism, or PA for short, and the cause is surprisingly simple. You've got these 2 little adrenal glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and in PA, they just go rogue and start pumping out way too much of a hormone called aldosterone. It's that extra aldosterone that's cranking your blood pressure through the roof. And get this, it's thought to be the real culprit in as many as 5 to 10% of all hypertension cases. That's a huge number.
And let's be super clear here. This is not your run-of-the-mill high blood pressure. The research is absolutely crystal clear. PA actively harms the body. It carries a much higher risk of things like heart disease, kidney failure, and even dying prematurely than other kinds of hypertension, even if the blood pressure reading is exactly the same. The stakes are just so much higher.
Okay, so if this thing is so common and so dangerous, how in the world do we actually find it? Well, that takes us to the screening process. The go-to tool is a blood test called the aldosterone-to-renin ratio, or ARR. Basically, it's checking the balance between that high-pressure hormone, aldosterone, and another one called renin. If that ratio is all out of whack, it's the first big red flag that a patient might have PA.
But, and this is a big but, there's a catch. The test isn't exactly foolproof. The research itself notes that it can have poor reproducibility. In plain English, that means you could take the test on a Tuesday and get one result, and then take it again on a Friday and get a totally different one. This is why doctors often have to repeat the test, which can make getting a solid answer a real challenge.
All right, so let's say you get through the testing and the diagnosis is confirmed. Now you're standing at a major fork in the road, a treatment crossroads, and the 2 paths you can take could not be more different from each other. So, path number 1 is surgery. It's a one-and-done procedure called an adrenalectomy. They go in and remove the overactive adrenal gland, which can potentially cure the high blood pressure for good. Path number 2 is medical therapy. This means taking pills every day for the rest of your life to try and block the nasty effects of all that excess aldosterone. So, it's a potential cure versus lifelong management. A huge choice.
So how on earth do you choose between those two? Well, luckily, this isn't just about personal preference. It's about cold, hard evidence. A massive meta-analysis from 2023 gathered up all the data from tons of studies to figure out, once and for all, which of these paths actually leads to a longer, healthier life.
Okay, now I know this chart looks a little intense, but the takeaway is actually really simple. It's called a forest plot, and it basically pulls together the results from 16 different studies involving over 15,000 patients. See that dotted line down the middle? That's the nothing happened line. Now look where almost all the results fall, way over on the left side. That tells you that study after study after study all pointed to the exact same powerful conclusion. Surgery is consistently better.
So what did they actually find? Well, here's the headline number, and it's a showstopper. Patients who chose surgery had a 66% relative reduction in their risk of dying from any cause compared to the people who were just on medication. I mean, wow, that is a massive, staggering difference.
And it's not just about living longer. It's about living healthier. The group that had surgery also saw a 45% relative drop in their risk of what they call major adverse cardiovascular events. We're talking the really bad stuff, like heart attacks and strokes. The protective effect here is just profound.
So we know the benefits are huge, but that brings up another question, right? How long does it actually take for these advantages to kick in? This chart shows us exactly what happens over a 2-year period. That blue line represents the patients on medication. The orange line, that's the surgery group. You see that gap growing between them over time? That widening gap literally represents lives saved. The benefit from surgery doesn't just show up, it gets bigger and bigger over time.
Let me put that in even more concrete terms. The researchers did the math, and they figured out that to prevent just one death, you'd only need to treat 200 patients with surgery instead of medication for a little over a year. Let me tell you, in the world of medicine, that is a remarkably powerful and effective intervention.
So, the bottom line, what does all this data, all these charts and numbers actually mean for a real person who's facing this decision? Let's boil it all down.
You don't have to take my word for it. The study's authors themselves said it as plainly as possible. They concluded that for most patients, the incredible long-term benefits of surgery, a longer life, a healthier heart, clearly and significantly outweigh the small short-term risks that come with any procedure.
And that really brings us right back to the beginning. For the millions and millions of people out there taking blood pressure medication every single day, this evidence raises one simple but incredibly important question. If you've only ever treated the symptom, isn't it time to start asking about the cause?